Gamers, gals, non-binary pals. Unfortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh's top talent is leaving the game. The game's not that fun. Advanced kind of sucks. Chain Link 1, Shifter, Chain Link 2, Molcharmy, FTK format. Gotta love it, gotta see it. Today, we're gonna get a little bit of an insight from MBT on why are Yu-Gi-Oh's best players winning the game. And in light of Jess's recent departure, posted a couple days ago, we're gonna give it a little bit of an insight from a personal perspective, as I was once a pro player. Shout out to Luxury Gaming. And yeah, let's give it our 2 cents.
Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, and
been a bad week.
What's this
for you.
lighting?
okay, so we
like
should
2
probably
a.m.
talk about this Jess video, right? In a video uploaded earlier today, Jessica Robinson, a professional player from EU, revealed that she is stepping away indefinitely from competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! This comes on the coattails of at least a dozen professional players online, either through YouTube or Twitter, announcing that they're taking a hiatus for one reason or another. The reasons that Jessica describes in her video shouldn't be particularly shocking to anyone who takes the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game seriously. They're the same reasons that pros have been echoing for the past couple of years, the same reasons why we keep getting this perennial news cycle of people feeling frustrated and burnt out on the game, and they're the same reasons that Konami seems completely willing to ignore. Obviously, Jess's decision to step away from Yu-Gi-Oh! Is her own decision, and I don't want to project any insecurities from the crowd upon her, but I think it's worth interrogating some of these larger reasons that keep cropping up and the mechanisms by which Konami could resolve them. And also, I mean, why I have no idea why they haven't. Like, that maybe is a question as well that should be answered. So let's begin with a little bit about Jess. Frequently, these Yu-Gi-Oh! Is dying videos are easy to ignore. They come from individuals who picked up the game last week and were frustrated by how complicated it was. This is a pretty realistic perspective for new players, but it's important to recognize that it's not what's happening in this video. She has a ton of really impressive finishes over a ton of different years, and she's been in a ton of promotional material for the game, period.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy that like a month after she literally like got 2nd place at the UK Nationals and filmed a like billion advertisement for like dueling, Master Duel, and like, you know, like advertisements for Konami, she literally just decided to like never do this shit again.
She's invested. This isn't some rando talking about how Yu-Gi-Oh's gone woke because you can play as lesbian VTubers. This is one of the game's best, clearly elucidating a really specific picture of why she's stepping away. So let's talk about the reasons. Firstly, Konami treats its top players really badly. So Farfa, you can just turn off the video right now, but I want to draw a specific analog between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering. In Magic the Gathering, household names are absolutely everywhere. The individuals you might be following on Twitter, you might be subscribed to on YouTube, who are crushing leagues and you're excited to see play on a main stage. Community figures are front and center in a lot of WotC's branding. Be they revealed.
I mean, this is not only just like a Wizards of the Coast thing or like a trading card game, but as long as you're not like a significant brand risk, most companies are very, 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 very open to working with content creators. Even if you aren't like a massive content creator, companies will still very much work with you in some capacity. Let me give an example. This is one guy I watched called like That Mill Guy, and he is a creator who got like a Bloomberg pre-release. He is a guy that, although he's like a relatively small creator, he is a guy who's not a brand risk and got like a Bloomberg pre-release card and got like some other pre-release cards and has had videos sponsored by like Wizards of the Coast and stuff like that, as well as like Nitpicking Nerds. One of my friends, Basil, she's not like a massive content creator like, you know, like I Show Speed or like Mr. Yeast with like 10 bajillion followers. She's got like a pretty sizable audience, but when it comes to shorts from like the literal League of Legends channel, like she has showed up in videos where like, you know, she gets to hang out and she gets to like talk about champions and she gets to like draw Aurora. Like, Jesus Christ, this is so fucking good. Because women, half of these people aren't women. 90% of these are like guys. This is fucking mid-beast. But you guys can get the idea. In Yu-Gi-Oh, where Konami will very often kind of like sideline its main talent or not really prioritize them in feature matches, or, you know, like not basically they like at most they'll give you a feature match if you're playing a funny deck. But when it comes to like other games, they're very willing to put their content creators and talents, you know, absolutely in the face and center of it all. And that is just an area where being a top player or being a content creator really does feel extremely disappointing, because at best from Konami you're getting like a box to open, you know what I mean?
It's for sets, helping with commentary at events, or just generally keeping people engaged in the game that they all play together. Wizards of the Coast does a fair amount for its pro players. Now, before I get too many Magic heads in the comments telling me that actually the pros are treated very poorly at Wizards of the Coast too, you have to understand where I'm coming from. I don't know about all of you, but as a child I thought that a dream job would be making a living off of the winnings from card game tournaments. And even though Wizards of the Coast does provide winnings to individuals who make top cut at their events, certainly it's not enough to pay the bills. That's in direct contrast to Yu-Gi-Oh, where currently, if you do well at an event, you get almost nothing. Jess talks a lot about this in her video, but she punched her ticket last year to the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship, meaning she was recognized as one of the top players in the world at the card game we all know and love. After wiping the floor with most Europeans, she went to the World Championship and wiped the floor with more individuals, getting a top 8 finish at the literal most prestigious tournament in Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history. And what did she get for doing so?
Nothing.
Yeah, you know, nothing. She literally got nothing. Cool. In the video, she says she walked out empty-handed. This prizing scheme has been replicated time and time again in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's truly frustrating. Did well at
By the way, let me get a shoutouts to the Konami welcome dinner, where it was like this dinner where they like had all the world invitationals, and they were like, oh, hey, here's like a cool, like, you know, family style meal on us, and we're all gonna like eat together. It's gonna be super cool. And like Joshua Schmidt submitted a request that he have like vegan/vegetarian food. He's vegan/vegetarian, and then they gave him a burger, which is super funny.
Local tournament, you're probably receiving your prizing in packs. No big deal, it's just locals. Did well at a regional? Well, I hope you enjoy a rubber mat and a deck box, because that is what you're getting. Now that you've done well at a regional, you're headed to the national tournament where you can compete for another rubber mat and a deck box. Sure, Wizards of the Coast isn't super generous with their prize pool, but in Yu-Gi-Oh, the prize pool is non-existent. Usually individuals are fighting over a rubber mat and occasionally a Nintendo Switch, a 7-year-old console at this point.
By the way, first of all, Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out, and B, our organization's signing players. That's where the money comes from, like FaZe Clan or TSM. I've talked about this like en masse, but the long short of it is there are two types of organizations. There are tier 1 organizations, think of TSM, Cloud9, FlyQuest, whatever, and then there are everyone else. And first of all, no one gives a shit about like the everything else organizations. Like, I'm sorry, Unicorns of Love, you are my favorite EU LCS team of all time, but unfortunately, Cassiopeia Yorick is just not getting there in terms of like brand value, you know what I mean? But when it comes to like tier 1 orgs, the main thing what they do is when they want to open up a division, think of like a Fortnite division or a PUBG division, what they will do is they will look at the game and be like, all right, are there any players that consistently compete at a world/national level, and does this game realistically accumulate around 50 to 100,000 viewers concurrently live minimum? And let's be fucking real, the most viewed Yu-Gi-Oh stream of all time probably came from like the Ludwig tournament thingy, where like Charlie won it with like red eyes or some shit like that. Like, unfortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh is just not a very popular game in regards to popularity and viewership. Like, think of games like League of Legends, PUBG, Fortnite, Call of Duty. These are games who are like the gold standard in terms of like viewership and player competition and player population and top talent population, that sort of deal. But Yu-Gi-Oh, at best, you've got like maybe a baker's dozen worth of players who are actually like able to put up relatively consistent results, and only like a quarter of them are like brand marketable, you know what I mean? And again, still no viewership, so good job. We really are a small India community. This game is a microcosm of a microcosm. I remember I was talking to a director at Cloud9 at a meeting, and he was like, yeah, we just haven't even like, I was like, hey, like Master Duel is gonna be a thing, and like me and a director at Cloud9, we were talking about Master Duel, and he was like, yeah, the way our projections are going and the way how these sort of trends usually pan out, we just haven't even given like a single serious thought in regards to setting up like a real Yu-Gi-Oh team, because they're just like, there's no return on investment. It's just like a dead game, no viewership, no prizing, no anything. Like, why should we even care? You know what I mean? What if rebooting the anime would bring a ton of new people to the game? No, because if you wanted to like reboot the old anime, it would be completely different currently to what it is right now. And if you would make a manga or a anime regarding the current state of the game, sure, you could get the manga where it's like, I don't remember what it's called, but like someone takes the Maxi challenge and like the Eldritch player decks out or something. But also, like, it is a very, very hard game to describe to someone and to get invested in, just because of how frustrating the current metagame is and how decks can be. Like, you could show a cool like Eldritch versus like Wind Witch battle, but let's be real, no one's gonna show up to Wind Witches to locals and immediately get their ass beat like 0-4 by Snake Eye players. It's like OCG Chronicles or something.
Now, I understand why a lot of people don't see a particular problem with this setup. It's one of the reasons why it's been widely reported that Kazuki Takahashi said something to the effect of he didn't want money coming into Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it would make it feel like seedy gambling in a basement somewhere. With the understanding that you can't play cards for a living wage, why would you even put money in the pot anyway? Just give people the clout of winning, which they can then translate into something sustainable by making videos about their deck profiles or something. But honestly, this is just completely at odds with the reality of modern cardboard. Decks like Snake Eye Fiendsmith are creeping into the $2,000 range. If it costs an arm and a leg just to compete, shouldn't you get some sort of return on investment if you're willing to put in the effort to actually do well? And as for seedy gambling, card games have just been normalized to the point where I don't think that's realistic. Lorcana, the game in which you cast Disney characters and sing songs together, gives out 5 digits of people for making top 64 at some events. As a result, there's very little incentive to push yourself as a pro player. Yes, you can stoke your own fires of self-determination, but the hours that you spend practicing the game are going to come at the realistic cost of your ability to hold down a job, relationships. To put in the effort necessary to be really good at this game, you have to make sacrifices somewhere. And when those sacrifices come at the benefit of quite literally no money whatsoever, it can be hard to say yes to it. The second...
My friends, Gilbert, he goes to my non-OTS locals, and he quit Yu-Gi-Oh! For like a little bit and got like really into Lorcana. And after like 2 months of playing Lorcana, he's earned like 3 Ursula prize cards. And if you look at the price of like Lorcana like prize cards, Ursula is like one of the cheap ones. This is like a $150 to $200 prize card. When you look at like Cinderella or like Rapunzel, you know, cards that are like $800 to $900 each, that is where shit actually starts reaching like, oh shit, this might actually be a decent game to get invested in due to like the relatively decent pricing and profits I can make off of this game. You know what I mean?
Reason that a lot of people are taking a break at present is because the format is really bad. So if you haven't been following the last couple of months of Yu-Gi-Oh, here's a quick explainer. There's a singular deck, Fiendsmith Snake Eye, that's head and shoulders better than anything else. It isn't so dominant that it's risen to the level of tier 0, but it is extremely powerful. The other decks in the format are still playable, things like Tenpai and Yubel and Ritual Beast and Gimmick Puppet, but largely the non-Fiendsmith Snake Eye decks are not really playing Yu-Gi-Oh per se. Tenpai is a deck that benefits off of the fact that going second has been so bad for so long. Konami has printed some truly outsized going second tools. They get to load up on Raigekis, Dark Holes, Lightning Storms, and of course really powerful lingering effect hand traps like Mulch Army and Dimension Shifter.
Yippee!
Ritual Beast is another shifter deck that has also benefited from the recent and baffling unban of both Thunder Dragon Colossus in some corner cases, but mostly Arch Nemesis Protoss, which can call fire and win the game on turn 0. Gimmick Puppet FTK is just an FTK. There's like a legal FTK with tops at the YCS level this format. Why are we all okay with this?
I love gimmick puppets! Just DD Crow! Literally all you have to do is just DD Crow the guy and like you win the game. It's just that easy. Why are people so upset? Just activate one DD Crow. It's not that hard, guys. But yeah, like the other decks, like Snake Eye Fiendsmith is like a disgustingly oppressive, powerful combo deck, but it's not like the other decks in the format are much better because the other decks in the formats are just scam decks. Like here's an OTK shifter deck. Here's like a deck that floodgates you. Here's a literal FTK deck. Like, cool.
A lot of people are quick to blame the problems of this format on Fiendsmith Snake Eye, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. I feel like it's the only deck in the format actually playing Yu-Gi-Oh! It's incredibly expensive, incredibly challenging, and the time that you spend learning the deck can be completely nullified by a tournament run in which an opponent just opens Shifter on you a whole bunch of times. Jess expresses frustration in the video with the state of things. She talks pretty directly about how the big names in the community, individuals who were consistently placing at events, really didn't at the last couple. That's because the way the format is structured, Fiendsmith Snake Eye is extremely powerful and extremely complicated. But the things that beat the strategy, things like Dimension Shifter, aren't too difficult to figure out how to use optimally. As a result, individuals spend a lot of time in this format preparing for scenarios that are never going to happen, because unfortunately, frequently you're going to sit across the table from your opponent, get outdrawn, and lose on turn 0 to an effect that your opponent activated at the first possible opportunity. It's a weird scenario insofar as the best deck in the room requires a lot of skill to pilot effectively, but every other deck in the room requires almost no skill, just the ability to outdraw your opponent. Unlike
this is like an issue I'll get into in like a separate video, but I don't think that formats where you're able to just be like, yeah, I outdrew my opponent, like yippee, like I opened Shifter and I was just better. I don't think that that's a necessarily great argument to make, just because even though these cards do exist, like Shifter, Mulch Army, whatever, when you look at like the NAWCQ results, even though shifter scam decks existed, over half of the format was, well, actually exactly half, if you count like Fiendsmith Yuvella's one. Like most of the format was still, again, like Fiendsmith Snake Eye just taking over the format. So just because like these hand traps do exist within the format, like yes, it's very frustrating to lose to them sometimes, and like yes, it can feel kind of sacky. Like these decks are purposely built and designed in a way to sort of scam their way to victory. And it's not necessarily an immediate like, oh, I got outdrawn by my opponent. It's my opponent played a deck that was purposely designed to defeat mine. And it's not necessarily that this is an issue of card design as a whole and like Konami made Lingering Floodgates and whatever. It's that people have to adapt their deck lists in a specific way in order to beat the current format. Like Tenpai doesn't want to play Dai-Fi. Like Tenpai doesn't want to play Shifter. It fucks with your Fadra, it fucks with your Binate Dragon, you can't go like Transcendent Dragon in the graveyard to pops, you know, stuff like that. But players are forced to make concessions in their deck building in order to beat these decks. And it is possible in the future that we are going to see more innovations from Snake Eye. You know, maybe they're going to start putting Gamma into the main decks to counter main deck shifters, or they're going to start playing like triple cross out again and like one shifter as a target. And like people are going to say like it's suboptimal, and like what if I just don't play against a shifter deck, or like what if I draw my driver as a brick? I'm sorry, but we have done literally everything we can in order to help. Like if you wanted to play a deck that was literally like unable to be interacted with and was like a super FTK, it was like blah 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 blah, I'm sorry, go play like Magic the Gathering. I heard that like Scam is pretty good there. Like literally, there is a deck called Rakdos Scam. It's all right. Shout outs to Grief.
Other formats, including some tier 0 formats that I've been particularly outspoken about, the people who are doing well this format are largely professional players that are extremely skilled, but also individuals who have completely missed people who are one lottery ticket away from $1 million, opening Mulcharmy's Shifter every Game 3. These two huge problems have coalesced into a kind of crisis. Professional players are feeling like their investment isn't being returned, both in terms of time, where their run can be stopped by an individual who is way less practiced than they are, and in terms of money, where they're investing a ton of cash into cardboard that isn't being reciprocated at all. As I've said in previous videos, this is in the face of a bunch of nascent card games that are promising a return on investment. I've been to bat for Alestrals a couple of times because I think it's fun, but it's hardly the only game in town. Lorcana has already attracted a significant amount of Yu-Gi-Oh's best. Christian Uranus posting about the Bucky ban. Dinka Pham can't go 5 minutes without talking about what song he's gonna sing. And at base, I kinda can't blame him. I play Yu-Gi-Oh because I think it is the literal best game in the world. But that doesn't mean that I don't spend some time at locals looking over at the tables of people playing One Piece and having a great time and thinking, is it that much better than its competitors? Is it worth putting up with a company that cares this little about the people playing the game just for like a 2% better play experience? And am I willing to sit through enough rounds of Shifter Mulcharmy to make up that difference? So with that all out of the way, let's talk about some potential solutions to this problem. First, let's talk about the pricing. This one's easy, just give us prizing. I know, Kazuki Takahashi didn't want the game to include money as a form of prizing, but like there's other stuff you can do. For a very short period of time after events returned post-COVID, people were getting Starlight sheets from the prize wall. How hard is that to give out to top performers? Sure, there is an additional transaction involved where you have to contact someone on the secondary market who's looking, but those were going for like $20,000. Like that seems like a reasonable amount of money to win for like performing at the national tournament. In fact,
Okay, this is like a bit of a stretch to say, because it wasn't that like national winners were getting like Starlight sheets. It was more that with the return of post-COVID play, people realized that they could kind of just collude with each other and be like, hey, this Starlight sheet costs like what, 1,000 tickets to buy, and one ticket costs about $5 because, you know, you got a ticket for like entering a side event, which maybe costs like about $5. So you would just be like, equate it, you know, $5 one ticket. You get the idea. And they would just go around the venue buying up everyone's ticket. You know, they would offer like $6 or $7 or something. And then after, you know, basically just farming that as well as getting a bunch of tickets for winning the main event, they would just pool all of their tickets together and spend $5,000 to $7,000 in order to basically just buy a $20,000 to $30,000 Starlight sheet. And like, yeah, that's like kind of pricing. It's just very, very unrealistic. You know what I mean? As well as the fact that like Starlight sheets are cool, but let's be honest with ourselves. That was like a very, very once in a blue moon type deal. Oh, and by the way, you can't even transfer tickets anymore. They just like removed that as an option. Like now it's tied to your cost IDs, so good luck, scalpers.
Prize wall for side events is actually a pretty good indication of how you could actually reward people without just handing them cash. Why are giant cards not a consideration for main event? Why don't we have specialty prize cards tailored to event anymore? Hell, One Piece is doing this better than we are, and they've been making a card game for 6 months tops. Not to repeat Jess's example, but the fact that an individual can be recognized as one of the top 8 players on the entire planet and walk out of a tournament with nothing is embarrassing. And secondly, with respect to the format, there's no easy way out of this. Again, a lot of people want to put the blame on Snake Eyes and say, oh, well, Fiendsmith Snakes is so unbelievably powerful that we have to resort to these lingering hand traps that win the game for us with no input. But cards like Shifter are going to be good if Fiendsmith is in the format or not. It doesn't take a genius to recognize that if you ban some of the cards out of the top deck, the next 6 or 7 best performing decks are still going to load up on tools like Evenly Matched. I think what needs to happen is on this upcoming ban list, instead of just hitting cards for power reasons, there needs to be a deliberate design philosophy behind it. I've talked about this a great deal on some of my ban list videos, but it's frustrating that it seems like ban list to ban list, there's no through line as to what Konami wants Yu-Gi-Oh to look like. Make a decision. Do you want lingering effects that are hard to track and require no skill whatsoever to activate to dominate? Do you want insanely complicated nuclear fusion style combos to reign supreme? Or do you want some secret third thing? A place where those lingering hand traps aren't specifically available to every deck. A place where there are a myriad of decks with different playstyles, none of which feel frustrating to play against. I lived through AGOV format. I know you can do it. At this point, unfortunately, curating a ban list so that such a format arises would require like upwards of 70 hits. I'm not just
Like, you could say that these tools are available to, like, every deck, but it's only, like, very recently, within the past year, the decks have been starting to abuse floodgates that they had no purpose or ability to abuse in the first place. Like, you could not imagine playing, like, Skill Drain or Summon Limit in a combo deck unless you're just trying to, you know, sack your opponent. But with current card design kind of being just coincidentally able to, like, with Pearly, send your own cards to the graveyard, or with the Whitewoods cards being able to, like, turn off your own Skill Drain by sending it for cost, or, like, with the Snake Eye cards being able to, like, you know, send a face-up card for cost and play around your own Skill Drain because it's no longer face-up on the field or whatever. That is where things become way more frustrating, and cards that were originally designed for stun decks or whatever just all of a sudden start making it into the combo decks. Let's not pretend and say, yeah, every deck can play Shifter. Like, absolutely fucking not. Like, you are not putting Shifter into Snake Eyes unless you're really, really scared of it and want it as a cross-out target. But for the most part, the only lingering floodgates that people are playing are, like, exactly Shifter in, like, decks where you have to be hyper-specific about what you are playing. It's like you're making a concession and playing a purposely bad deck, or you're playing something like Mochami Perulia, in which case, yeah, that is a card that could probably be banned because holy shit, the card just says like draw 2 to 7 cards depending on your matchup. But I don't think it's just as generic as saying, yeah, these cards are super easy to use and super cheesy, and you can put them into any deck and anyone can play them, and this is what's killing Yu-Gi-Oh! What's killing Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't the fact that, you know, decks can play Shifter. What's killing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that card design is so pushed that the only way to even put a small roadblock in the way is to create something like Dimension Shifter. And if these cards have to be created by the R&D department in the first place, then maybe Konami was smoking crack for a little too long.
Just talking about like taking Flamberge out to pasture and putting Shifter to 1, like you probably have to ban everything up to and including deck lockdown. Regardless, I think this is sort of a come to Jesus moment for Konami. I don't think the current direction of the card game is going to kill it, but it's going to take the individuals who are responsible for the most thought being put into the game, the professional players that largely dictate how the game is played even at a local level just by disseminating lists and information, to become disinterested. And if that happens, the game is absolutely going to suffer. I think it's worth doing what we can to reward the people who are performing. Otherwise, they're all just going to have to start YouTube channels to put food on the table. Or edit for another YouTuber.
Me!
I made Top Cut at Euros, and all I have to show for it
Yippee!
is this fucking mat. Cool.
This video has been brought to you by top 64 EUWCQ competitor Vladis. Alright, that's it.
Fun fact, I used to be on a pro team, and guess what? 90% of our team's income came from Coliseum matches, which are things that I did not partake in, of course, but let's just say a lot of people did a lot of money matches. I would never, and I condemn it strongly. Don't money match, kids, or you'll go to hell, according to Konami. But yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Unfortunately, very rough spot. There are like a billion issues with Konami's current design, but yeah, unfortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh's in a very, very difficult spot. There are a lot of issues with Konami's current design philosophy. There are a lot of issues when it comes to what Konami wants out of its game, and the format as a whole, as well as, you know, just the cards that exist within it, is just in a very frustrating spot for both players and onlookers and whatever. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are on the format. I think that this shit is straight doomer, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.